Hey, this is Del Thompson with the band Bride, and you're listening to the Wild Man and Steve Show.
You are about to listen to the intersection of faith, talk, and music. The Wild Man and Steve Show starts right now.
Professor Steve, how are you doing today?
I'm doing okay, Wild Man. I was mowing the grass earlier, and I got to tell you, I felt like I had maybe a Petra in my shoe, or something. I don't know. I'm not sure what that was.
Really? Yeah. Now, you being a Latin teacher, of course, that coincides with Greek and so forth. So what do you mean by Petra when you say that?
Oh, golly, sorry, I forgot. Not everybody might know what I'm talking about there. Yeah, a rock in my shoe. Yeah, Petra being the word for rock in Greek.
Yes, absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, we want to welcome today Mr. Bob Hartman, lead guitarist, one of the founding members for Petra, and all since the 1970s has been built a tremendous band over the years. Bob, welcome to the program. How are you doing today, sir?
Doing great. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, it's great to have you. So, Bob, one of the things that I wanted to mention today was right before the show started, I just started to listen to the project you did of Guitar Legacy. Now, when it came out in 2017, I was listening to it back then, but just to remind myself of it, I'm a guitarist myself. I'm amateur, so this is really a tremendous opportunity for me. But just wanted to put this out there that you playing the electric distorted along with the classical was a tremendous blend, great mix. What was that experience like?
Well, it was a challenge because I don't read music, and he not only read music but wrote music, composed music. So I would have to learn everything by ear and just figure out how do I complement what he's doing. And my first try on the first song, they told me, no, it was too light. They wanted the rock guitar in there. They wanted more, rock kind of tone. So I went back and redid it, and they were happy, and we kind of followed that pattern all the way through. Some of these songs had already been recorded by him. I don't know if you followed the story. Of course, he has since passed away.
Right.
But they started his son. I became friends with his son at church, and they started a missionary getaway here where I live. And it's a place where missionaries can come off of wherever they've been and stay for a very, very reasonable price. And it's just meant to be a mission to missionaries. And they have supported it over the years in a number of ways, donations, but also through the father's music and selling his CDs. And so they wanted me to be a part of a CD together with him, and it worked out great.
Yeah, it really is a great sound, and it is a great story that it's so mission-oriented, so ministry-oriented, which isn't a surprise for any of your fans because that's one thing that we've recognized from the beginning. So I started with the with the most recent. So let's go back in time a bit for our listeners here. Going back to the beginning, when Petra first started, when you were starting the band, can you talk a little bit about what that experience was like? What were the challenges? What was it that the band faced in the early days?
Yeah, well, a lot of people today that are younger are surprised to hear how much Flack there actually was back in the early days. I mean, there were people, preachers who were preaching every week in the pulpit that rock and roll music was of the devil. So we had a lot of that going for us. But the other side of the coin was that the Jesus movement was also at that time when we started in 1972. And of course, the Jesus movement was a counterculture movement, basically often outside of the church, where young people would get saved and start ministry to young people, to people who were like they were before they became Christians. And that's kind of the idea that we had behind Petra, because we knew that we didn't care much for traditional church music ourselves as musicians. And so we wanted to play music that we enjoyed and believed that there were a number of people who would listen to what we had to say in the music and between the music if they liked the music. And so we began to put together rock and roll music with Christian lyrics, and we started out by playing just any place we could. We played in high schools. You could still get into a high school back then. Played on college campuses, sometimes open air, just go out and play. Sometimes we played in prisons. There were a lot of Christian coffee houses at the time. We made the rounds with those. That's how we started. We were mostly evangelistic. And, a bunch of Jesus people would have us come in and play and give our testimonies and see if anybody got saved.
You're surely not having that kind of opposition today, both from where Christian music has come since then, but then also who you are as established artists. You're surely not experiencing pushback today, are you?
I don't ever hear it anymore, and I'm glad about that because we dealt with it for so many years. I actually wasn't that long ago. You would be surprised to know that it wasn't that long ago that somebody came up with, some kind of comment. I think I got less and less patient over the years.
One moment gone into the past, but here and now will never last. You made the most of your design. You walked alone. You held the line. That's when you know.
So, one of the questions along with that, Bob, do you have any story or any kind of explanation when you talk about the pushback that you received in the early days, and that many are surprised to hear of that today? Anything that comes to your mind to share that would kind of put a perspective of what we're talking about here?
Yes, I remember one of the earliest experiences I had that really it didn't make much sense to me. We went into a town to play for a Christian coffee house, and the person who was sponsoring us came up and said, yeah, there's a church across town that's praying against you guys. And that just hit me like a ton of bricks. I thought, praying against us? Because my heart was, here we are in their town trying to reach people probably they've been complaining about but don't know how to reach, and they're praying against us. And it was all because of our style of music. There was also such suspicion. in a way, I think we know a little bit of what some black people feel like when they go out and go into a store and they're followed around by the salesperson. Because Petra was always under suspicion as far as our Christianity goes, simply because of the style of music we played. It wasn't enough to tell people, yes, we're born again Christians. We're a major part of our church. Our church is behind us. That didn't matter. They were still, there was a skeptical eye on us at all times. So we had to be careful that we didn't show any kind of bad attitude about anything, even though we might have felt that inside. There were Christian bookstores that refused to handle our first album because they didn't sell rock, or maybe there were people in there, who frequented their stores that were dead set against rock and roll music. And then a little later in the 80s, there were people like Jimmy Swaggart, who was on his TV show that was worldwide, telling people that Christian rock was of the devil. And there were a number of other people that, really we had to work around. And it was a challenge.
Sure.
So, Bob, you talked about, being in a town and getting some pushback, even though you were there, as you said, to try to reach people, especially young people. Can you share with us a story or two maybe about when that actually happened, or someone who may have contacted you, before a concert, after a concert, or even, later, phone, email, whatever, as time has gone on, but who said, hey, your music really edified me, it enriched my walk, or maybe actually brought me to Christ?
We've had, I would say, thousands of those. And that's really what has kept us going. If it weren't for those, we would really question what we were doing. The reason that we persevered through all the tremendous opposition was because we believed that God was using us, that something was happening, that people's lives were being changed. Actually, as we began to play more and more, we began to play sometimes at Christian colleges, and we found a really good audience there. Although we were mostly evangelistic, we saw how our music was really welcomed by young Christians. It was a strengthening thing to them, and we realized that we needed to broaden our ministry to include those people. So we actually changed. We never dropped evangelism. In fact, as the years went by, we realized that one of the most effective evangelistic tools that we could do were to promote our concerts to Christians, have them come and bring their non-Christian friends. And that was the most effective way, I think, of reaching people over the years. So, yes, that definitely kept us going.
When you talk about the history of Petra, and you talked about the motivation, humble yourselves before the Lord, and God's leading you. One of the amazing things about Petra is that they were around for so long, and there were some personnel changes as far as, like the big one, of course, was when John took over for Greg, and you have those things happening. How did you keep the band together through all of those changes?
Well, that was one of those times where we had to really pray, God, do you want us to keep going? And I really believe that God just dropped John Schlitt right in my lap, and that it was a God thing. And, we didn't audition anybody. It was God put his name on my heart through another guy, and God just kind of burned it in there until I tried to contact him, and I was able to contact him and found out that he was in the perfect place. God had prepared him perfectly to do this, and so we knew that we were supposed to go on. But I can't express how much of a miracle that I feel it is that Petra was able to continue like we did with a new sound, a new singer. I mean, I don't know how many people realize what a big miracle that is.
Yeah. It certainly is, but I think you're right. The common fan probably does not realize, because you're right, because it wasn't just the change of the singer. It was the change of the style. John brought a complete different style to the band. My parents. It's funny because it was you, by the way, who convinced my parents that Christian rock was okay, because they were against it pretty much, and didn't want me listening to any of it. We were raised in a church home until they heard "Captured in Time and Space." And they heard the live altar call, and they heard what Petra, the band, was all about. And then my father was always impressed with your writing, because my father was a Sunday school teacher, and he always just lived by the scripture, and he would just point out the choruses you wrote, saying, well, that's straight from God's word. Well, that's straight from the scripture. So that was a huge help in trying to sell this to my parents, that this is a music that can be of God, because I always liked rock music. It just always was something that was appealing to me. So one of the things, about the idea of keeping the band together, that is a miracle, as you stated, that God did that. Did you ever foresee that was going to be what Petra was going to be? How big Petra became? Did you ever foresee that was going to happen when you first started?
Oh, no way. Yeah, I was probably one of the last person in the band to think that God was going to do what he's done. I mean, this is my life's work. I started this band when I was a young man, and here I am getting ready to go out and do another gig. I mean, that's just miraculous, to be able to do what you love for that long period of time. So, no, I had no idea what God was going to do, but I'm very thankful for it.
Yeah. So, curious question. You mentioned before about the pushback that you got from the church community with Christian rock. Something I've never really heard asked of you. What was there any connection with the secular rock bands? Were they accepting of Petra, or was there any connection there at all?
We knew over the years things would come out, as people would tell us that they knew who we were. And one thing that got our name out there a lot was we would advertise our concerts in the later years in Not of This World and Beat the System era. We would, and maybe probably the next album too, but we would advertise on secular rock stations. They wouldn't play our music, but we would put together spots that used the same kind of music they were playing and put it in the advertisement and buy ads on their radio stations. And that worked really well, because people would hear that and say, hey, that sounds pretty good. I think I might want to see that. Or if nothing else, they'd say, Petra, yeah, I heard about them. And that word of mouth, that name recognition won us a lot of souls, I think.
Yeah, I know for a fact it did. I remember just what you're talking about there when I was in high school on the school bus. and they would have the boom box. Somebody would have a boom box on. They'd be playing the local rock station. And I remember when you were on tour and the commercial for Petra came on. And I remember a lot of my friends were like, "Who's that?" And then, of course, they saw my T-shirts, and I was able to tell them who it was. And it did have an impact. So it's just amazing, as you say that, to see how much of an impact Petra had on the church kids and on the lost. It's just incredible. So, one of the things, Bob, now when I was able to get involved with Petra, it was in the mid '80s. Back to the Street actually was the first concert that I saw when John Schlitt first started with the band. And from that point forward, I went to 16 Petra concerts. I was known as the Petra head and everywhere. But just curious, just curious with all the genres and the decades that Petra went through. Do you have a favorite era of the style, or when you were touring? Do you have a favorite time span that you say that's the highlight of the career, or would you say that there were just highlights all throughout?
I would say there were highlights all throughout. I definitely have a fond memory of certain parts of what was going on. I remember, I guess it was about the beginning of the More Power to You tour. No, wait. Yes, More Power to You. We were out really hitting it hard. We were playing all kinds of places, a lot of churches, a lot of smaller crowds. But I remember one distinctly as we got going, as the album got out. One time we were playing in Dallas, and it was sponsored by a Baptist church, which was very, very unusual at the time. And, the youth minister at this Baptist church had us in this auditorium, and we set up, and we didn't know what to expect. And all of a sudden we heard this tremendous rustling and sound out in the auditorium as the kids came in, and we saw the entire auditorium fill up with excited kids, and we thought, you know what, this is actually working. And we had a great concert, and we saw more and more of that. But I remember that as a turning point where we realized, hey, this is really something. And over the years, I have great fond memories. We did the Not of This World tour, and that tour just really exploded. It was we were constantly having to add shows to our concerts and do more shows, and it was just really, really exciting when things are growing like that. And I would say that the same thing happened again when we did Beyond Belief, and of course Beyond Belief we toured a lot during that time with Josh McDowell, and that was a tremendous experience. And so I have all these different eras, you might say, of Petra's existence that are just really special to me.
Bob, if you could answer something for me, and this is a question coming from a non-guitarist. So Wildman plays, uh, I sing, but I don't do guitar. And so help me understand something. All of us can spot music and go, dude, that sounds like that's straight out of the 70s, or wow, that really sounds like it's from the 80s. What is that? You have played across styles and genres and so forth. What is that we're queuing in on? The non-specialist who's not going to be able to maybe understand what's happening here. How do you achieve those really distinct sounds that we associate maybe with different eras?
Oh, I don't know. I've always been a blues-oriented rock player, and it's really hard. That's my roots. So it's really hard for me to do anything different than that. I mean, that comes out when I know it and when I don't know it. It's just part of me. But I guess a lot can be done in the way something is produced and the other parts that play. The drums are really important as to how, the song stylistically comes out. There's a lot of things, and I wish I could pinpoint everything about every genre, because I think it would have been a lot easier for me. But I just try to write what's in my heart and, come up with something that I like on the guitar and hope that other people like it too.
Well, you got my attention just now when you said roots are in blues, and so many, obviously, rock musicians will say that, and people who understand rock can hear that. Tell us about some of your favorite blues artists and blues influences.
Well, when I started out playing guitar, and this, of course, is, people know I'm old, so this won't shock anybody. But I started playing guitar before the Beatles, and I was learning surf music on the guitar, and then the Beatles came out, and it was just a whole different thing. But after the Beatles came artists like Jimi Hendrix and Eric Clapton, and especially Eric Clapton played a blues style. And in fact, if you read about Eric Clapton, he listened to all the old black blues artists, and he basically got his style by listening to them. And so many guitarists from my era got our style from listening to Eric Clapton. So it was Eric Clapton, it was Jimi Hendrix, it was Jeff Beck. A little later on, it was Joe Walsh. And those were the guitarists that influenced me the most. And what I find fascinating today is when I listen to guitarists on YouTube, they all sound identical to me. I couldn't pick them out if my life depended on it. They all use the same tone and the same style and play the same way. And that wasn't the way it was back when I was learning guitar. Everybody had a different style. I mean, you could tell the difference between Jimi Hendrix and Eric Clapton. You could tell the difference between Carlos Santana and Joe Walsh. You could tell the difference between different guitarists because they had a different tone, a different style, a different way to play. And I felt that was a really neat thing.
So, I'm hearing from what you're saying there that's something that is somewhat missing today as far as having a unique style. So let me follow up with that, Bob.
Now, I don't want to sound like an old fuddy-duddy here because I like a lot of that new stuff, but it just strikes me how similar so many bands are. I mean, you could probably take 100 different bands and solo the guitar track, and you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between one and another.
Yeah.
They're really good. They're really good players, But it seems to me like at some point in the future, somebody's going to break out and start something new.
Yeah, that makes sense. So for you personally, when it comes to sound, style, tone, with all of your years of, using equipment, amplifiers, rack mounts, what have you, what is some of the best or your favorite equipment to use?
Well, I like to use amplifiers turned up loud. Something like, I don't know if you can hear that.
Yes,
Oh,
we
yes.
can. Keep going, please.
But I like to, I've always liked the way a guitar sounds through an amp loud. And I'll probably pay a price for it the older I get, but that's okay.
Okay, we got to jump in here because this is something we've talked about with a number of artists, and Wildman and I totally agree on this. And from what you just said, you're right there as well. There's something about this kind of music, and when played loud, that is perfect for the gospel. And I realize there was a time when people maybe have thought, no, that's not right, and needs to be organ based and needs to be choirs and ropes. But we're coming at it from the perspective, this is the good news that God has brought to the earth, that there is hope and salvation in the name of Jesus Christ, and it's free for you. To me, that's music that needs to be cranked from the loudest, biggest stack of Marshalls that you can find.
Okay, I totally agree. I think that that the gospel was custom made. Rock and roll music was just, God gave rock and roll to you. It was what he used this to reach thousands of people and maybe millions of people. And it is an exciting sound, an exciting music, and that's the way God is, the life of a Christian is. It's life more abundantly. And I think it just is a perfect fit.
So, Bob, you have your guitar with you. Really appreciate that. Is there anything specific you would like to play for us right now?
Well, I'm not much of just a solo guy, but I've got. Name that tune.
Oh, very good, sir.
Wow.
Yeah,
Can you name it?
I'm trying. I'm almost there.
I'm all fired up.
Oh,
Oh,
yes, fired up.
yes, there
Yeah,
you go.
exactly. Yeah. I remember that at the beginning. I think what I was missing was the fired up at the very beginning before you start playing there.
Well, yeah, you're going to miss that because I'm not doing it.
Oh, that was great, Bob. Thank you so much for that. So, with that being said, just listening to you right now, do you do you have anything in the works right now that you're working towards? I know that I saw where you and John talked about Petra playing in Petra, and I'm not sure what COVID did to that. But just, is there what's Bob? What are the plans for Bob right now?
Well, Petra is actually going to do a date in October, God willing, and COVID willing, in Missouri. It was rescheduled. It was supposed to happen in March, and they rescheduled it in October, and we hope it's going to come through and everything will be better by then. I think things are better overall in Missouri than they are in a lot of places anyway, but we're hoping to be able to do that and really looking forward to it. In fact, that song "All Fired Up" is one we're going to do in that concert. We reached back and grabbed a couple of things we haven't done in a long time, and we've had one rehearsal, but that was in March before we got canceled, and so it went pretty well. Everybody was very excited, and that's going to be fun.
So, Bob, I'm going to hit you with a series of questions, and we're looking for a rapid fire answer. I'm going to give you two options. What's your preference? Here we go. Beck or Clapton?
Oh, that is so hard. That is really hard. I would have to say Jeff Beck. Do I
Okay,
get to do I get to tell you why?
please do.
Yeah. Jeff Beck changed my life. It sounds like my testimony. I saw that when I was 17, I saw the Yardbirds live. Jeff Beck was playing lead guitar. Jimmy Page was playing bass. And Jeff Beck, I just blew me away. They turned their Vox amplifiers up really loud, and it was like nothing anyone had ever heard before. They were way, way ahead of their time. And that really had an effect on me and my playing. But also Jeff Beck, because here's a guy who has completely reinvented himself and been successful for decades. Now the way he plays is totally different from the way he played when I first saw him. And it is totally unique and just amazing.
Okay, I'm going to need a technical break while I pick myself up off the floor. You saw the Yardbirds with Jeff Beck, and Pagey was on bass.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure where I'm going to can go from there, but that is fantastic.
Yeah.
All right.
Then I saw the Yardbirds after Jeff Beck left and Jimmy Page was playing guitar.
Wow.
I didn't even know he could play guitar.
Wow.
When I saw him, I thought, well, there's that bass player. He's different from the albums. Who is that? Jimmy Page?
All right. Well, we're going to press on, and I know this is stuff that your fans have been wanting to know for years. Hot dog or hamburger?
That's a close call too, but I would have to say hamburger.
Vinyl or digital?
Digital.
When you're listening to your music, or in particular music, headphones or speakers?
Speakers.
Football or basketball?
Football.
We knew that one.
We kind of knew that one. And the number one question that fans have been wanting to know over the decades, your favorite translation of the Bible?
I've been using lately the new King James, believe it or not. There's something about the King James that was always that's what I started reading when I became a Christian, the King James, and that's a lot of the scripture that I memorized was King James. And just to prove that I'm not one of these King James only guys, I went to the New King James, which has a few different things, but it still has that poetic King James English that I like. I don't know, I can't help it. I will read other versions. I will reference often other versions just to get another take on a scripture, but I like the new King James.
So, Bob, one of the questions I'd like to throw in there that I've been curious about personally, I'm sure other fans have been as well, the impact that you've made on the world, basically, with Petra and your guitar playing and your writing. I don't know the total of how many songs you've written, but I know it's way up there. And I'd just like to know, what is it that, like when you decide to write a song, both lyrically and musically, how do you decide which direction to go? What is it that what are some of the steps you take when you go through that process?
Okay, well, a lot of times, in fact, for many years there, I was writing with basically like a gun at my head, because we had so many years where it was write, record, tour, write, record, tour, write, record, tour, on and on and on, no stopping. And often the time we had to write and record was a lot shorter than it should have been. And so I had to develop some types of techniques, I guess you would say, in order to survive and as a writer and figure things out. So often what I would do is take a pad of paper with me and jot down ideas. And I would do this when we were touring, or whenever I got an idea, hey, that might make a song, and write it down. And so that when I sat down to actually write, I would go through those ideas and pick one. And it was like having to prime the pump a little bit. I would look for an easy one, an obvious one I thought, yeah, I think I can get through that one, and take that idea. And then the next thing I would do is I would say, okay, what kind of a song would that idea need to get across? Would it be a fast song, a slow song, a ballad, a big rocker, an anthem? What kind of song am I looking at? And then I would start maybe working on chords, and most of the time I would start with the chorus, because often the chorus contained the title. If I had come up with an idea for a title of a song, that a lot of times would become somehow involved in the chorus of the song. And I would try to hammer that out, see if I got anywhere with that, and then write verses along the same lines to complement that chorus. And that was the main way. Now, that's not the only way I wrote, but that is often the way that things happen. Sometimes I co-wrote a lot of songs. Actually, I co-wrote a lot of songs with John Elefante, who is, of course, an excellent singer, a keyboardist, plays some guitar. And John would come up with an idea on the keyboards and sing a melody without any lyrics and say, can you put lyrics to this? And sometimes I would start from scratch and put lyrics to his melody and his music. So there were different ways I did it, but I would say that first way was the main way. For a lot of songs.
This is my creed, the witness I have heard, the faith that shall endure. This truth is assured through the darkest age of past. Though persecuted, it will last. I will hold steadfast through this creed. I believe He sent His Spirit to comfort and to reveal, to lead us into
So what are your thoughts on the Christian music scene today? I mean, are the new bands, the new artists, or are the kids getting it done, or do they need to get out their pad of paper and listen to some Yardbirds and read their King James?
Yeah. Well, I know that they are. I would have to say I don't follow Christian music that much anymore. I don't know. I couldn't tell you who's really big and who's really not. But yeah, I believe that there's a lot of really good people out there. They're making great music and serving God, and I wish them the best.
So to those musicians, Bob, if you could give them one piece of advice from your years of experience, what would that be?
Well, that's a hard one because a lot of them probably wouldn't think that my advice would be very valuable at this point in history. But if I had to say, from a spiritual side, of course, is that remain true to God. Don't let others interrupt your vision for what God has told you He wants you to do. And if you don't know what God has told you to do, then find that out, because Petra would have been lost without that. If we didn't know who we were and who we were not, we would never have gotten anywhere, because there are all kinds of voices and pressures trying to say, go this way. You guys should do this. You should record like that. You should, you should. And oftentimes those are not what God is trying to say to you. And now I guess we've been through so many down times, so many times where, we weren't even sure if we were supposed to continue on, and had to listen to God for guidance, that, we humbled ourselves and said, God, what do you want us to do? And that was, there's always something there.
Wow, that's what this is all about. That's for sure. Seeing it as the ministry, and I've seen before and heard you say before, Bob, that you did sense that you were called to ministry from the very beginning, and this has been your ministry over the years. So I know you've written a devotional book, but here's my final question: when is your book about all this coming out?
Yeah, some people have inquired about that, but yeah, I don't have any plans to write one right now. Who knows? Okay.
All right. Very good. Well, Bob, this has been great. I want to thank you for your time with us, and just honored and humbled to have you with us here today. It was an honor to talk with Bob Hartman. He is one of the pioneers of the Christian rock movement who faced much difficulty being one of the first to share God's message through rock and roll. Despite what he has faced, he has such a great spirit of love and humility about him. His focus has and is on Christ, not on his circumstances. In Philippians, Paul shared the same sentiment, "Be anxious for nothing, but in everything thanksgiving." May this be true in all of us, regardless of our circumstances and difficulty we may face serving Jesus. Thank you for listening to this episode. For more information about us and to leave us a review, please go to wildmanandsteve.com.